Okay, where did we leave off? What page? What page we leave in the Chovos? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Chovos HaLevavos 170. How do we know that God is not bound and not forced to act in a certain way? He says, God is not needy. There's nothing natural about God, meaning innately in God to behave a certain way. Therefore, He made diverse things within existence. Which is determined by His wisdom continuously. He's saying two things. We'd mentioned the Maral, Basura Memoris Nevrolam, right? This is profound. The Maral says in a number of locations. The world was created with 10 utterances. Why wasn't it created with one utterance? Now, what does 10 indicate? 10 is a unit. Although it's made up of
very diverse things.
Diverse? So if you look at the world, relatively speaking, is made up of infinite components. The question is, do they complement one another to create one entity? Or they're diverse, one that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the other? So therefore, Chazal tell us, based on the Torah, the world was created through 10 utterances. What is 10? 10 is one unit. Although it's made up of multiples, but factually it's one. So therefore, the world, although it seems to be diverse, but it's echod, it's one. So that's what he's explaining. It's made up of various things which continuously change and diverse. That indicates and displays His unity and how He wills through His action. Whatever God wills, He had made in heaven and earth. Exactly. Doesn't make a difference. No, because it's not possible. Again, it's not. V'elakim yodea im bavura lo hoyu kol habrios b'dmus achas tmuna achas. V'adinosei bavur zeh hishtanus simone hachochma bavruim. Therefore, there are various sources to see wisdom within His wisdom in creation. He says something interesting. All creation wasn't in one form to be identical. He says, God's wisdom is unfathomable. He says, consummate wisdom belongs only to God. There is no power besides Him. Okay. Yeah, we'll discuss it. You know, it's interesting. A human being is multi-tasked. Person can do many things. The way we're explaining, God Himself does many things which are diverse. One thing seems to have nothing to do with the other. But factually, when God does it, everything is ultimately to address one objective. A human being could do many things, even though one may not have anything to do with the other. Could be that there's a new understanding of Tzelem Elokim, right? B'Tzalmo B'Dmuso. Just as God does things which are diverse, even though they're not diverse, they seem to be diverse, but one complements the other, we can do many things. Although we do, does it all contribute to one objective? Not necessarily. If a person lives the way he's supposed to live, as the Rambam says in the Hilchos Deos, you're able to live every moment of your existence for the sake of God. How? You eat to be healthy to serve God. You sleep to serve God. You procreate to have children to serve God. You eat to serve God. Every moment of your life is a mitzvah. Even what's most mundane. So there, you're utilizing every aspect of your existence, which one is unrelated to another. Your mind is fully invested in Torah. You eat Oneg Shabbos. You procreate. Although it's a physical act, it's something which is pleasure. You do it for the sake of God. That's kedusha. But if a person doesn't understand that, we say this is that, and one thing has nothing to do with another. Just as we, looking at existence, if you don't understand and the things which are unfathomable, we don't see exactly where everything complements everything. But factually, based on our Masorah, why did God create existence? Only for one objective, right? To bring about perfection. You know, the Ramchal writes that is an expression, you know, by hook or by crook. At the end of the day, we're going to arrive at that destination. God says, I have one objective. The world has to reach its level of perfection by the year 6,000. The world will only exist 6,000 years. The Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, and the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah. 6,000 years, and the Gemara in Sanhedrin. 6,000 years. Each day of creation corresponds to 1,000 years. Shabbos is fallow. The 8,000 year God will recreate the world. So what is the objective? Mankind, through their actions, has to achieve perfection, whatever that level of perfection is, by the year 6,000. What happens if we don't? Man says, you know, I'm not interested. God says, by hook or by crook, whatever it takes, you take a detour, somehow you're coming back. Whatever it takes to get you back. The ship may sink, and you're going to hold on to a log. And all of a sudden, the current is going to bring you back to land. That's the way it's going to be. There may be a lot of pain. There may be endless casualties. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the world will arrive where it's supposed to arrive. So it seems to me it doesn't make any sense. Because you don't understand. The Ramchal, there's a second volume came out on a certain work of Ramchal, and I shared it with somebody. He is a Rosh Hashiva, and he understands many things. So he told me, when I shared this thought with him, it was during my Shiva, when I was sitting Shiva a few years ago. So I shared it with him. He told me from the Vilna Gaon, David, it's beautiful, beautiful mashal the Vilna Gaon gives, that to bring up, the Ramchal says, if something happens, and we understand fully why it happened, whatever event happened, and within the context of God's involvement, we understand why it happened. We see the Gamzu Latova. He says, whatever you understand the Gamzu Latova, it's on a very limited, it's not really correct. It's not correct. So Ramchal says, why? He says, the span of existence is 6,000 years. Every event that happens at any moment, every frame of existence, it's not for that moment. It's because it's part of the full picture. It's a 6,000 year of involvement to create that one entity. So although you understand it in the moment or in the frame of 70 or 80 years or 200 years, but to understand how exactly this component fits into the totality from the first moment to the last moment, that you want to understand. Because you don't see the whole span of history, of existence. Even if you understand this moment, but this moment's value is only versus the totality of existence, which is the first moment to the last moment. You following? That's what the Ramchal says. Wait a second. Whatever I say contributes to understand this paragraph. Okay? So the Vilna Gaon explains it with a mashal. He explains it with an allegory. He says that there's a certain, we find David Melch uses the term zov puz. Puz is the most valuable type of gold, the different grades of gold. Only a king's ransom could afford to purchase this kind of gold. So there was this king who was phenomenally wealthy, and he says, I want a set of regal garments made of this certain type of gold, which are made into thread, and I want it. It's irrelevant how much it costs. He sends an emissary off to another part of the world where you're able to get this gold. Costs hundreds of millions of dollars, let's say. Brings it back, gets the best tailor, and he fits him, he measures him. So the tailor says it'll take about 3 years to make this kind of garment that you want. After 3 years, he designs it, fashions it. The king's ready to put on the garment, puts it on, stands before the mirror. The king has never seen anything as magnificent as this in his life. A level of majesty, the way he radiates. He's like amazed. You know, the pleats and everything, every aspect of the garment. And then he says to the tailor, he says, you know, you're very capable, you're very creative, you're an expert. He says, by the way, you're being taken to the gallows in 10 minutes. Yeah, this is what the king says to the tailor. So the tailor says, why? Here I worked 3 years unceasingly to produce this magnificent piece of work. I'm being put to death. Is that to thank you? He says, you don't understand. I gave you a certain amount of gold to make this garment. That gold is worth a king's ransom. You definitely siphoned off some of it. You embezzled some of the gold. Because the way I understand it, based on this garment, you didn't need all that gold to make this garment. So you must have stolen some of the gold. Therefore, you're going to be put to death. This is the accusation to the tailor. The tailor says, God forbid, did not take not an iota of an ounce. Every bit of gold you gave me went into this garment. He says, unfortunately, I have to prove it to you. You know how I have to prove it? And he explains it to him. He says, you have pleats, and you have folds. If you undo it, then you'll see every bit of gold is in that garment. But now that it's all made and pleated and so on and so forth, with all its folds, you don't appreciate how much gold was needed to make this garment. So how am I going to prove my innocence? I have to take the garment and undo it and just bring it back to cloth. And when I bring it back to just cloth, then you'll see that every ounce of gold is within that garment. And he undid the garment, and he showed the king, and he was shown he was innocent. He didn't. We don't understand many things. After 6,000 years, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know, he's going to unravel all existence from the first minute to the last. All that makes no sense, but within the total picture, everything makes sense. And you understand exactly the greatest tragedy at a certain moment in history was the greatest blessing. But in the frame of what? The moment, it seems to be only pain. We don't see it because we don't see the full picture. But at the end exists when he actually rolls it all out from the first moment to the last moment, then you'll understand its value. That's the Vilna Gaon. Okay? So that's exactly what the Ramchal is saying. So whatever we understand at this moment, why did you succeed? And you did a mitzvah. Because Hashem gave me opportunity. It's true. But it's much, much more than that. This mitzvah was vital for the total picture.
So that's the difference. If you're saying variation is actually an outcome of whatever's needed.
But I'm saying the same thing. We, with our limitation, we don't understand, and we don't see how everything contributes to the whole. But factually, it shows, if you believe in God, that God is one, and you understand that God is, but you see, God is not limited, is not locked in. God has ability, and God chooses to do as He chooses to do.
We're trying to understand why there's variation in creation.
Because that reflects on God.
The result, variation is the result.
Of God's ability to do whatever He wants to do. I once mentioned, Naaman Abraham Morales says something phenomenal. This is against the Seder, has to do with the Seder. It says that Avram Avinu had no children. Hashem says, you can have a child. He says, but I see, I'm an astrologer, I see the stars say, Avram ein lo ben. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Avram ein lo ben, Avram yesh lo ben. Avraham will have a son. So the Ramban asked the question, I mean, he was thrown into the kiln, came out of the kiln alive. It's irrelevant what the stars say. The stars say, you're not going to have a child. Hashem says, you can have a child, you'll have a child. What's the problem? I mean, we're talking about a person who went in the fire, came out, He was willing to die, and he saw God's ability. So what's the question? If God says you will have a child, regardless what the stars say. So the zodiac says you're not going to have a child. Right? That's the question. It's an obvious. And it says when he believed, it says, God considered righteousness that he believed God when God says you're going to have the child. Right? So how do you understand it? David, what do you say? Tell you what the Ramchal says, what the Maral says, and it has to do with this. He says, on the terrestrial level, there's continuous change. People are born, they die. People are born, they advance, they decline. You have seasons. You have the sun rises, sun sets. There's continuously flux and change within existence. Which existence? The terrestrial level. Things grow, they wither. On the celestial level, things are basically the same. There's no change there. So therefore, what is miracle? Nature is, but even within nature, there's change. So there's change, and so it's natural, there's supernatural. Within natural, there's change, so it's a little more change. But at the celestial level, there is no change. So if the celestial says, Avram will not have a son, God doesn't tamper with that. Where does God make differences? And he overrides the systems within a system where there is change. But the system where there is no change, God doesn't tamper with that system. So Avram accepted what Hashem says, you will have a child, that was considered righteous in Avram. So that he came out of the fire, that miracle took place at what level? On the terrestrial level, not on the celestial level. Therefore, it's v'achshvel lo l'tzedakah. To be continued.
God has made commitments to us. And how I'm reading this is God has flexibility whether he's keeping those commitments or not.
No, everything is conditional. The main commitment is that you're eternal, that will never change. The Jewish people are eternal.
No, but there are other commitments in the Torah, right?
No, but that's true. But you have to meet the criteria. If you meet it, it's true. That's all conditional. You know, you put in the hours, you get the bonus. You bring in the client, you get the bonus. You don't bring in the client, you don't get the bonus.
But what it says here is that God has complete flexibility at all times to do whatever he wants at any time.
Sure. Even, let me ask you a question. What about a person who's not deserving? And for whatever God chooses to treat him as if he's deserving, does God have that ability? Of course.
But I don't see the consistency with mitzvah.
Because you don't, that's what he says. There are many things which are unfathomable.
No,
but there's enough to see that God has credibility, that God has the ability to do whatever he chooses to do.
But even if I don't understand what's good and bad, then even if I don't understand it, so it's possible that there's a commitment, and God is required to follow that commitment.
You don't understand it.
I'll
give you an example. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. If God is bound, he does it. But evidently, you don't understand. That's the reason why. I'll give you an example. A person works on a project in a company, and he has to present it to the board after six months. And he felt he gave it its best. That he thinks it's a masterpiece. And the fact is, it's shoddy work. It's irrelevant what he thinks. The question is what it is. You know, I think I'm a good Jew. It's irrelevant what you think. Are you or you're not a good Jew? If you make the grade, then you're a good Jew. You didn't make the grade, but I think I am. It's irrelevant what you think you are. So based on our evaluation system, what we believe may not be reality.
I think the question I'm asking is different. God has committed, he says, I am going to do X. Forget about whether I understand.
If he said he's going to do X, he will do X. He will do X.
So how's that consistent with what we just read, that God has complete flexibility? If he's committed to do X no matter what, forget about whether I understand what X means, does he have flexibility not to do X?
But of course he has flexibility. But it's only in the negative. It's only in the negative, not in the positive. Negative is always midas harachmim. Positive is midas adin. To withdraw from the positive, that's midas adin. Like a navi, the Rambam says, if a navi has to forecast the future to prove that he's a navi. He has to do many things to prove he's a credible prophet. He has to perform a supernatural act, and he has to forecast the future. Let's say forecast the future that Nineveh is going to be destroyed. And Nineveh is not destroyed. Does that prove that he's a false prophet? Rambam says no. Because since a person could always do tshuva, and there's always midas arachmim, whenever it's talking about the negative doesn't have to happen. But if you forecast something positive is going to happen, it doesn't happen, then he's a false prophet. Because anything which comes through prophecy, if it's forecasted positively, God will never withdraw that positive prophecy.
That's not what we just read. We just read it says complete flexibility at all times, whatever they want.
You know, we're speaking generalities. We're not talking about specifics. Okay.
Rabbi, going back to the
Let's
discussion we had about one